Hello and welcome to another episode on the Everyday Joy podcast. I'm your host, Joy Ravella. You are in for such a treat all of this week. We're doing something a little different. Now, a few days ago, I was saying that we've ticked over the 50 episode milestone, which is pretty huge. So I thought this week we could pause, reflect, and unpack some of the more powerful moments on the Everyday Joy podcast. So I've gone back through the archives. I've picked out the 5 episodes that I've received the most feedback on. And all this week, I'll be diving deeper into the top 5 episodes on the Everyday Joy podcast with a brand new guest. So let's get into today's Bible verse.
Be wise in the way you act toward outsiders. Make the most of every opportunity.
I've got MJ Want here with me, unpacking some of the more powerful moments on the Everyday Joy podcast. MJ, we are over 50 episodes in, and there have been a lot of powerful moments, and I love unpacking all sorts of ideas with you. This one I'm particularly excited about because you do have a fair bit of experience with sharing the gospel.
Once or twice.
Yeah. Could you share a little bit about, I suppose, your credentials in this space?
Yeah, sure. So I work here at Positive Media with you behind the scenes with the radio stations and the team and the content creators. But before that, I spent a decade and a half as a pastor in a number of different churches, from Church of Christ to Baptist and ACC or AOG, if you want to use the old school name, a style of churches, and was a youth pastor, worship pastor, not that I can sing, campus pastor, and spent better part of my teens and 20s working full-time in church, quote-unquote, ministry.
Yeah, I want to know more about this worship pastor.
Yeah, no, you don't. You don't want to know about that. No one does.
Well, you spent a fair few years working in the church and understanding the importance of presenting the gospel in the right way. For someone who doesn't quite understand the word the gospel, what would be your quick summary of it?
The gospel in its very essence is the reality and the truth of who Jesus is, and the news that Jesus, being fully God and fully man, was sent by God to be the once and for all sacrifice for the sin of all of humanity, for all of existence, and that Jesus took the wages of our sin upon himself, and through his death, burial and resurrection, sin was conquered, its power over us was removed, and that we now have the opportunity through Jesus to know God the Father. And so really when you say the gospel, it can mean 50 million things, but the very essence is who Jesus is, what he did, and what he's accomplished for us now as people that are believers, and the opportunity for those to come and to know him too.
So good, MJ. A+.
Oh, thank you.
That's really good.
Worship pastor for me.
Well, it's amazing that you're able to communicate that, and that is such a gifting that you have. Jen, on episode 26, talks about how doing that, the idea of it, and I think for a lot of us we can relate, is we want to be able to so succinctly and confidently share our faith, but it doesn't always come naturally. And here's a little bit of what she shared on episode 26, titled Sharing My Faith.
Let me start off by saying this. I always thought this verse was about preaching. So back like a while ago when I was being a new Christian, I was like, oh, you know what? It's about preaching. This doesn't apply to me. I can't have this apply to me. Because I was just afraid of judgment. I was afraid of just being that bad Christian. But I was proven so wrong by my best friend, who isn't a Christian. And she shared with me a conversation that she had with her boyfriend. And so he asked her, like, Jen doesn't really push that on you, does she? She doesn't push her belief on you. And she boldly stood there and she looked at him. She goes, nope. And at that point, she actually turned to me. She goes, this is what I said, Jen. I stood up for you. She goes, you don't act like that. You don't act like you're on a high horse. But I know you're a Christian. And it's not because you go to church or you work for a Christian organisation, but it's the way that you act and the way that you talk and the way that you share and the way you react to all the trauma that has gone through your life. And you're still going through it, but yet you come out and you're happy and you're joyful. And
And episode 26 essentially unpacks this idea that our actions speak louder than words, and the way we live our lives really matter. But today I want to pivot a little bit, MJ, and I want to talk about those opportunities where we do have the opportunity to speak about our faith, where we can talk about Jesus. So bearing that in mind, why do you think this conversation struck such a chord with listeners?
I think for anyone that's pursuing Jesus as best they know how, they do have a desire for the love, the grace, the forgiveness and acceptance and the power that comes through knowing and following Jesus has made a difference in their life. And I don't think I've encountered a believer that has really experienced that goes, I don't want anybody else to know that.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep that to myself,
yeah.
Knowing the challenges that life present every single one of us, believer or not. And so I think what Jen was sharing about and why this verse and ultimately the whole podcast that you talked with her connected is we all deeply have this desire for friends in our world and colleagues and family members that we hope to know God one day. But sometimes we don't know how to do that. And for fear of doing it quote unquote wrong or thinking it's somebody else's job or whatever the caveat we tell ourselves, a verse like this in a podcast like this gives us a greater sense of confidence that we're not alone, that it's not a unique challenge, that we don't have to be perfect to be able to share Jesus with people, and to be able to remind ourselves that we do, regardless of role in the kingdom, professional or not, all have an opportunity every day to take the goodness of God to the world around us.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I'd love to just say to you listening right now. First of all, you're not alone in feeling nervous and anxious about it. I do too, actually. I get so nervous and worked up about it. I think I was in the car with an Uber driver the other day, and you have those conversations, and he was telling me about a difficult time in his life, and he was going through all sorts of he was working about 20 hours a day to make ends meet. And I was sitting there and I'm thinking, I should really tell him about Jesus. And I panicked. I didn't know what to say, and I prayed to myself, and I ended up just telling him. I didn't tell him I was on air on 89.9 The Light, but I said, you should listen to this radio station because I think it'll be positive for you. And I remember walking out of that Uber feeling mixed emotions. A part of me was feeling, why couldn't I just say it? why was it so hard for me? But then I also thought about this verse where it talks about making the most of every opportunity, but it also says be wise in the way you act towards outsiders. And if I took into consideration the fact that this guy came from quite a staunch Hindu background, and if I took into consideration being in an Uber and you put in all that data and you say to yourself, okay, what's the best way to handle this situation? I think actually suggesting that he listened to a Christian radio station was actually making the most of every opportunity. What are your thoughts on this, MJ?
Yeah, I think the being wise to the outsiders part of the verse, I remember a guy called Dave Adamson, who's an Aussie guy, but is used to be a online campus pastor at North Point Church with Andy Stanley. I'm probably going to butcher quoting him, but I remember spending some time with him last year, and he said to me, MJ, be the reason someone wants to follow Jesus, not the reason they get turned away from him. And it's this idea of the way I live my life, the way I love others, and that being the ultimate way people know if I'm a believer is not my stance on ethics or morals or politics or anything, but if love is the way to showing people the kingdom, then the way I act towards people outside of the kingdom has got to be centered in that place of love. And that's where the wisdom comes in, is there are opportunities that do come with people that don't know God. And the key for us is to make sure that when they're there, we use wisdom. Other times it can be You can be over the top and go the other way and be like so uber eager that you're not being wise. You know, like, let me tell you about the gospel. It's like, do you even know their name? Do you even know who they are? Do you even know their story? Are you unintentionally triggering all those things? And sometimes it's in the middle of the two of those kind of things as well. So I think wise is about how you act, but it's also wise about how you speak. It's wise about where you speak, knowing that you can't fit everything in. I've been following God for 25 years. I became a Christian in my mid-teens. I went to Bible college for years. I passed it, and there's still so much I go, I don't know. I think I'll say that wrong. But the good news is God is not going to, I believe in those moments, go, you tried to share someone my love and kindness and forgiveness and compassion, and you butchered that theological statement and only got 80% of it right, and you were trying as best you knew how, but you butchered it, and so therefore get out. That doesn't sit with the alignment. Now, if you're taking things out to try to win someone over, it's like, yeah, there'll never be challenges in life. Yeah, you'll be a millionaire by following God. Okay, now you're being deceptive.
Yeah.
But if you're doing as best you know how, pursuing God every single day, trying as best you can to exude the love of God in your life, using wisdom, pursuing godly wisdom, not just your own, and putting those elements together, I think more often than not, the words, the actions, the countenance, the way you care and love for others, that almost more than anything else will speak to a world around us that is needing hope, that is needing compassion, that is needing love. And we see those things exude from the person of Jesus.
We covered a lot of ground with today's episode on the Everyday Joy podcast. And there's so many different directions we could take this wrap up. But I just want to encourage you to not be afraid of sharing your faith. And I'm speaking to myself too when I'm saying this, because I believe that in the moment, God will give you the strength. He will give you the wisdom. He will speak to you and use that opportunity. Our part in all of this is to not be completely unprepared, I think. It's to really set aside some time or some thought space into crafting and perfecting your story, your testimony, because it can't hurt to be prepared, right? So when that opportunity does come, sort of like a magic trick, you can just whip it out and say, yeah, here's something I prepared earlier. It doesn't have to be scary, and you don't have to know all the answers. The Holy Spirit is right there with you. At the same time, let's not be flippant about it. Because what you have to say, telling someone about Jesus, is the most important thing that they will ever hear in their lives. What you have to share is absolutely life-changing. So let's exercise wisdom. Let's take the time to prepare what we have to say. Let's not waste the opportunity, as Colossians 4:5 talks about. If someone asked you, why do you believe in Jesus? What would be your answer? Something to think about today.